Welcome into day 7 of the 21 Days of Prayer for 2026. Fired up because we're a week in now. This is officially the 1 week mark, day 7. So congrats, you've made it 1 week of the 3. That's worth celebrating.
One third of the way.
Yeah, third of the way there. We're excited about this one, not only because the written devotion was so good, so be sure to check those out, but also because this story is a favorite of ours, as we always want to talk about finishing your life well, and we get to meet 2 elderly people in Luke chapter 2 in these verses named Simeon and Anna, and they have lived their entire life waiting, looking for the Messiah, looking for the Christ, and finally, at the end of their lives, they're obviously the Luke chapter 2 is trying to show us that they have reached the end of their lives. They are elderly, they're not too far from the end. And finally, the baby boy Jesus comes into the temple, and they get to see him, and they realize we've made it. Yeah. We finally did it. We've seen the Messiah. And I thought it was just a very interesting story about how they've been waiting their whole lives, and yet they knew they were going to see the Messiah, the Christ. That kind of been a promise to them, yet they didn't do anything that wild. Apparently, they just did normal stuff. They were just in the temple, just like they always were, is kind of the assumption in Luke chapter 2. They weren't like the wise men searching all over the place. They weren't traveling the world, meeting every baby boy they possibly could. They just lived their life normally and assumed that God was going to move in their normal everyday life.
Yep. You've heard the phrase, I've waited my whole life for this.
Yeah, it was true for them.
There's a difference in like you waiting your whole life, as in 30 years of your whole life.
Yeah.
And these senior adults waiting 80, 90 years. Like it's a totally different perspective to say like, I've waited for this. But I think I like what you said about the waiting. You can't afford to wait as long as they did on a promise and not do anything in the meantime. So there was a bit of multitasking that happened in their lives. You can simultaneously wait on a move, on an answer from God, but still remain faithful, still busy yourself with the things that are going to advance the kingdom. I think about, for us, that's really easy to understand because we never wait and don't do anything. Especially, you got a phone. I can recall times where I'm watching TV, and when a commercial comes on, I'm not going to wait and watch the commercial. I'm going to pick my phone up and scroll,
else,
or I'm going to record it and then fast forward through the commercial. I'm not going to wait. Or I know people that will have their laptop on their lap, and they're watching something on TV, and then the commercial comes on. They're going to work. Or when you're in a literal waiting room. I was at the dentist office the other day, and I look around the waiting room. Every single person has their phone out. Like no one is just sitting there. I know you think this is a funny word we laughed at, this idea that American travelers are doing right now.
Yeah.
When you fly on a plane, instead of bringing a book or your computer or working, there are these psychos that will just sit up in their seat and look forward or look out the window the whole flight, not engage.
Sleep or read.
Not engage in anything. And it's just like they are, and they talk about how hard it is. It's called raw dogging.
Yeah.
They talk about how hard it is just to focus on just sitting in the seat.
Nothing. They just watch the plane map that's on the screen in front of them.
What kind of psychopath just waits on the plane to land? Like nobody does. Think about how much more you could do. And the same applies to us spiritually. We're just not going to sit around and be like, well, I'm not going to do anything until God answers.
Yeah.
Just sit here and twiddle my thumbs. Nah, this is an example of an older couple that for decades faithfully served, faithfully took the next step. You wrote that in the content for this morning. Just take that next step. Be faithful to do the small things. I love that you said that. The little things God's calling us to do now while we wait.
Yeah, it would have been so easy for them to get bitter about how long they had to wait, especially if, as it's presented, that there seemed to be this person who was told, like verse, I think it's verse 26, it'd been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not die before he'd seen the Lord's Christ, before he'd seen the Messiah. And so if you've been told that, like, okay, so like, do I need to set my alarm early for tomorrow? And God's like, no, you need to wait 80 years of your life, or however long, it was that he lived to old age. Like that's a long time. It'd be so easy to get bitter and like, God, come on, man, you promised me this. You told me this. I know this is a good thing I'm praying for. and yet I'm not seeing it the way I want to see it. So we get bitter about it. We start to dislike God. Our heart gets out of tune with what God's doing, because all we're doing is sitting on our hands, waiting for God to show up and do something. I was talking over the Christmas season at REVO in 2025. We had some violinists come and play, which of course, I mean,
they were so good.
Yeah, I know that.
Love that.
At Christmas, it's awesome. We take it any Sunday, of course.
For sure.
But for Christmas, it's just even more special. But I was talking to one of the ladies that came and played at the North Campus. We have these little guitar stands. So when the guitarist is done playing, they just put it on the stand, right? So I thought, well, could a violin fit on that? Would that be helpful to you if when you're done playing, you just put it on the stand, and then when you need to come back on the stage to play, you can just pick it right back up? And she said, no, I'll just take it with me because it gets out of tune so easily, which I thought was really interesting, because guitars aren't that finicky. They do get out of tune pretty regularly. You got to mess with them, but apparently violins, powerful instrument, right? It really moves you emotionally, yet it's so small and fragile, it gets out of tune really easily. And so she wanted to take it back there with her and make sure that everything was good. I think she was a little bit nervous and wanted to make sure everything was perfect, which I appreciate. But I thought, man, isn't that like our hearts? Like, it's a really powerful part of who we are, our souls, our hearts. And then there's that song lyric, tune my heart to sing.
Yeah.
And this idea that our hearts can get out of tune so easily when we're not constantly vigilant about doing what it is that God's told us to do in the waiting, in the middle of, I'm waiting on God to do this, to reveal this. And so I think a great lesson from Simeon and Anna is how they're just in the temple. They're praying. They're doing what they always did. They're being faithful in those little things, keeping their heart in tune to what God's doing. So then when Jesus does come in with his parents, this little baby boy, their heart's not out of tune, so they can recognize him immediately. And God just opens their eyes like, yep, this is exactly what I promised.
Yeah. And they didn't give up. You talked about the idea of getting bitter. For us, when we're in the waiting room, sometimes we can pray. And then if it doesn't happen, even a promise that we feel like God made us, if I had to wait 80 years for it, man, I don't know if I'm hanging out in the temple every day. There might be a point in my life where I'm ready to move on. But if they hadn't have dedicated themselves to it and showed up every day, came back to where the Lord had promised and the Lord was working, then they would have missed it. They would have missed the promise that was given to them. And so don't give up, don't get bitter, but also don't give up. Don't lose courage with that. That's part of keeping your heart in tune so that hey, like God has promised me something and I'm going to stay lockstep with him until the promise is realized.
Yeah, so I think a great next step for us today on the end of week 1 and beginning of week 2, day 7, 21 days of prayer is to do exactly that, and to find something that God is doing, a way that God is working. Find a way in the little things that you can stay faithful to keep doing whatever it is that God's called you to do. I think about even something as simple as serving other people. That God's going to be glorified when you serve other people. That that's the will of God for your life is to serve others. And so what's a way you can do that? It's like, I'm waiting on God to do these other things, but I'm going to partner with God in serving other people. I was even listening to a podcast on my way here this morning, actually. Funny how God times all these things out. And the idea was talking about Bible reading and daily Bible reading, and how it's not every day that the Lord just meets you in a powerful way when you read your Bible. It's not all 365 days out of the year, but that doesn't mean you don't do it. You only do it a few times because, he's only going to meet me here and really in a powerful way, teach me something a few times. But the guy said at the podcast as I was listening to, he said, it's worth reading the Bible 364 days out of the year if God meets you once. And so 365 is like, God's worth that. So I think for us, man, waiting is hard, but if we're waiting on God, he's worth it. So today, think about what is it, that next step that we can take. Maybe it's serving others. Maybe it's something simple, the little things that we can be faithful in while we wait on God.